Hello, and welcome back to the Fae Banner Review, where we talk about the Fire Emblem Heroes. Not the mainline ones this time, just the OCs again. Today, we have a brand new Mythic banner featuring Jormungandr. This marks the third Snake Lady OC in the past 3 books, and as per tradition, I will be using this coveted small line graph that may or may not be small at the end of the day to rank the brand new Mythic banner, as well as the circle graph that may or may not be a circle at the end of the day alongside it. Today's rankings will be based on how many Fae OCs we got this month, and if you could hit that like and subscribe button, I'd really appreciate it. Thank you! Our Mythic this time around is Jormungandr, and I definitely butchered that name. She's an Astra Mythic that grants a defense bonus. We're not really short on Astra Mythics, let alone really strong ones, so it makes me wonder why they went with that blessing specifically instead of something like Dark. But hey, I won't say no to more strong offense Mythics. I will say no to mediocre ones though, but how mediocre is she? Let's see. Jormungandr comes with Serpent's Fang, which is a slaying beast stone with built-in barricade. It grants herself and any ally within 3 rows and columns of her some stats during combat, breath, and hardy bearing if they can meet a defense check. She gets 25 true damage during combat, 15 true damage reduction, an additional 15 true damage reduction when a foe's special goes off, null guard, and distant counter when transformed. She also comes with a PRFA skill in Relax, which grants 5 visible HP, eases the beast transformation condition, grants Spectrum 9 during combat, 7 true damage and true damage reduction, 2 special jumps before the foe's first attack, and at the start of the player phase and enemy phase, it grants Imbue and a brand new status in Relax to herself and any ally within 3 spaces of her. And the Relax status grants Spectrum 4 during combat, additional stats based on the highest penalty between themselves and nearby allies, and nullifies penalties during combat, and grants 7 true damage reduction. She seems okay, I guess. Every unit these days has to do something combative and supportive, but the combat stuff feels very minimal overall. It has the same true damage reduction, copy and paste stuff that we keep saying over and over and over and over again, but besides the special jumps and having slightly more stats, there's not really a lot going on here. She does get hardy bearing at least, but I feel like that's more impressive from a support angle than when she uses it herself. In fact, I'd argue all she really brings to the table is her support, and there is a fair bit of it at least. Besides the hardy bearing, she does have innate anti-warping, which is still convenient to have, even if units can attack with styles or ignore it with pass. It still stops some units in their tracks, and it's never not useful to have in some capacity. Besides that, Imbue is Imbue, and they really love printing that bonus, don't they? I feel like I've seen it every month this book, but it's start of combat healing, so it's not that bad to have at least. Relax as a status is decent enough, given it grants a fair bit of stat swings and some true damage reduction. It kind of comes off as another take on Grand Strategy where the penalties are more to your benefit. I feel like if her combat isn't up to par, then you can always make her a makeshift support unit, which will definitely help her in the long run anyway. In fact, you'll probably want to do that because she doesn't really have a lot of combat stuff going on beyond the standard copy and pasted stuff. It's not even that bad, at least when including the special jumps, but it's nothing we haven't already seen before. What's also not helping is that she's a mythic, which means she doesn't gain any extra HP or other stats when being deployed in Aether Raids, which is, how do you say, bad? Combat mythics are usually just weaker than units that can benefit from blessings because of that, and for tanks in particular, the extra HP does go a long way. The only one in recent memory that kind of gets away with it is Formotus, but that's also because he has a lot of strong combat effects and debuffs a lot of attack and defense. Jormungandr doesn't really have much in the way of combat overall, but she can at least be used to some success. The question is really whether it's even worthwhile, because despite having a lot of support in her kit, she's not exactly doing anything that crazy either. It's just the sheer quantity of effects that make her go from bad to, not bad. It could be worth a shot, I guess. Honestly, I wonder if I'm just being too hard on units these days. But worst case scenario, if she isn't even that good in either role, you could just fodder her to another unit or something. And speaking of which, Jormungandr also comes with a bunch of inheritable skills, including Armored Flare, Defensor's Briar Far Save, and a brand new beast skill in Iron Fighter, which inflicts -4 attack, defense, and res on the foe during combat, grants 25 defense-based true damage and true damage reduction, grants a guaranteed follow-up attack, and reduces all follow-up damage to 1 damage if enemy phasing. The unit has more defense than the foe, and if the number of spaces from the unit's space to the foe's space is 4 or more, or if it's the first enemy phase and the space count is 3 or less. this is not okay. It's great, in fact, but I'm not gonna lie. Just kidding, I just lied. Anyway, I really don't like the set all damage to 1 precedent whatsoever. We already saw it with young Edelgard and Claude, but now it's an inheritable armor skill and arguably the best option for most armors now. It's really between this and patience, and plenty of armors can't even use the latter. Not to mention the former is a much better tanking skill, whereas patience is just more combat oriented. Regardless, it definitely feels like their attempt at reining in reflex since it just won't work against this skill. I guess damage output has gotten so ridiculous at this point that they had to do this, but also, you tell me how it got to this point in the first place. Got any answers for that, baby Camilla? Ironically, I don't even know if this is going to stop baby Camilla whatsoever, since she could just 1-tap or 2-tap most units in the game with the Erica ring as is. Can't say the same for a lot of other units though. The existence of Iron Fighter means that units will have to beat armors on their first attacks or they'll get walled out entirely. Or they could use the ever so reliable legendary Elise who ignores it all. Thank you, video game balance. Ignoring Elise for a second though, this would pair really well with Lucina and Ike's ring since they could just bolster the first hit damage a fair bit. Ike ring should work on every combat, whereas Lucina is once per turn unless player controlled, but it will make getting around armors a lot harder regardless. The conditions are a bit weird though, but if I'm understanding it correctly, and if you know me, I'm probably not understanding it correctly, it basically works guaranteed against everything on the first combat and then anything with a Lin ring range on subsequent combats. At least that means there's ways of getting around it a fair bit. Honestly, between the rings and this skill, you could probably salvage a lot of armors at this point, which on one hand, that's pretty cool that more armors are viable now. On the other hand, this skill is absolutely terrifying because Faye is not known for keeping things reined in. I really wouldn't be surprised if we saw more of this type of stuff down the line, and just like with other effects in the past, I expect it to go overboard really quick. Besides that, Armored Flare is a newer armored special with great talent built in. It's a pretty solid special overall, and Briar Far Save is in fact Briar and Far Save. If every modern premium armor didn't already come pre-built for combat, this would be really awesome stuff to pass around. But it's still armor fodder, so it can only be so bad, I guess. You get a pass this time.
Nice and easy.
And other than that, that sure is Jormungandr. I don't really know what to make of her overall. She doesn't seem bad per se, but nothing here feels that impressive for the most part. I think what's holding her back in my eyes is ironically the fact that she's a mythic, which is usually a detriment for combat related purposes. They don't benefit from blessing bonuses, which means they lose out on a bunch of HP and extra stats, and that does go a long way. At the very least, she has some amazing, good, decent support. It's decent, yeah. You could probably make her into a suitable enough support by revamping her kit, and she does get the benefit of having a supportive PRFA skill, which further increases her mileage there. That said, you could definitely do better for Astra Mythics. Alphador, Sather, and Elm all share in the same season, and they're just strictly better options to go with. But if you were going to grab Jormungandr anyway, this wouldn't be the worst time to do so, since her shares are really good. And speaking of shares, what's a mythic banner without a mythic banner share? Last month, it was just debatably okay, with the red share doing the heavy lifting. This month, it's a massive step up, as most of the color shares are pretty good. Starting with colorless, Jormungandr is sharing with Mythic Tiki and Spring South. Tiki as a unit is weird because she's pretty supportive all things considered. As a tank, she at least now has the benefit of Roy Ring and other miscellaneous skills, and worst case scenario, you could double down on support with her by replacing her kit. Fodder-wise, she has Armored Ice Cap, which is nice enough, but armors aren't exactly known for their splashable fodder most of the time anyway. Still, she's a solid enough unit for what it's worth. And Spring South is a fodder bank with a decent enough special. Most of his stuff is just dagger fodder though. Actually, it's all dagger fodder, so yeah, cool I guess. If that's up your alley, then great, and if it isn't, then go build a dagger unit or something, I don't know. He's at least a fodder duplicator, which isn't too bad. And for that reason, I think the color share is pretty okay. You could do a lot worse than this. On the red share, we have Legendary Black Knight, Spring Erica, and Young Felix. Legendary Black Knight is still decent enough as an armor. Giving out reflex is still a nice benefit, even with Iron Fighter being a thing and them printing more reflex support this year. At worst, it's another save option, which is fine. Spring Erica, meanwhile, is another unit with 3 range style, and she can hit things from, get this, 3 spaces away. Isn't that pretty cool? We keep getting more and more units like that, but she's still another decent option currently. In worst case scenario, she has good enough fodder to pass around. You really can't go wrong with Attack Speed, Liberate, or Aria for a bunch of units. And Young Felix is T Felix but newer, and Brave Felix but newer. He's fine. He does Felix things, I guess. His fodder definitely makes up for it, though. Burst of Thunder and Duelist Blow are really good infantry skills, and Arc Rival is still Arc Rival, so you can't really get enough of that. It's overall really great fodder. In fact, I would say the red share in general is pretty great, even if it's more on the fodder side of things. Can't go wrong with any of it, though. And then on the blue share, we have Emblem Byleth, Spring Thor, and Young Ingrid. Emblem Byleth can dance 2 units at once, which is pretty cool, but he also has Favor and Instruct fodder, which is even cooler. His ring is also broken, so you may want to grab a copy if you haven't already. Spring Thor, meanwhile, is another Arc Rival fodder unit who also happens to come with Heavenly Soar and Divine Spectre, which is just Blue Sky Gust for defense. Her support also isn't too shabby since she also gives out Drive Hardy Bearing and Omni Guidance, which is okay enough. Couldn't really go wrong with a copy of her. And Young Ingrid is another arcane unit who could duplicate fodder. She could do a bunch of stat swing support, which is nice, and she comes with Favor, which is even nicer. Arcane Thorn is also the only notable inheritable lands currently, so if you need to update a favorite unit, then there you go, I guess. And considering what the blue share has, this is probably the best time to go grab it. I'd argue it's at least the best share on the banner just from a fodder perspective. And last, on the green share, we have Attuned LeeHighwind, Attuned Lachesis, and Morva. This is a generational fumble if I've ever seen one. LeeHighwind and Lachesis are really great fodder units at least. LeeHighwind gives out Blue Sky Gust and Momentum Echo, while Lachesis has Arc Rival, Rival Break, and Potent Echo. They're both also fodder duplicators, so on that merit, the green share is also really good. But on the merit of Morva, it's also really bad. For some reason, they really had to include Morva. I don't know why. He has Hold Guide at least, which is fine, debatably maybe, but he's also in the codes, which isn't helping his case. Not to mention, Flyer C skills are incredibly competitive, so Hold Guide will almost never be one of the go-to options for many units. It's fine for what it is, but it definitely muddies the share overall. But at the very least, Morva as a unit also isn't that good. There's really no winning with him here. Honestly, if it weren't for this share, I would have said this was a near perfect banner for the end of the month, but it's still good for what it is. There's some good catch-up units, lots of nice fodder. Morva, if you're into that kind of thing. Everything and less than you could ever want. And yeah, that sure is the banner. Yep. Okay, bye! And now that we've gone over the brand new Mythic unit, I think it's time we rank the banner on the small line graph that may or may not be small at the end of the day. And would you look at that? The brand new Mythic banner has earned a 6 out of 10 on the small line graph. And based on my understanding of the banner, I believe that it would be best fit somewhere around this area of the circle graph. It's a fine enough banner, but the value lies more with the fodder than the units themselves. Even with all that text, it still wasn't good enough. And you may be wondering to yourself, I'm gonna summon for the funny snake lady anyway. Which isn't a question, but if you're wondering whether it's worthwhile to, then I don't know, maybe? If your interest solely lies with Jormungandr, then I don't think she's really that worthwhile as a unit. I think her best attributes are with her support, but even that's nothing too amazing for the most part. Anti-Warp, Breath, Hardy Bearing, Stat Support, Imbue, and True Damage Reduction are good effects, but you can also get most of this stuff from other units. The only aspect of her that's less common is the Hardy Bearing support, and it's hard to say if you really need it that much, even if it is nice to have. Combat-wise, it seems to be about the same as ever, but being a combat mythic isn't very appealing either. I wouldn't even say she's that bad, but she's not someone I think most people need or is worth going out of your way for. That said, the fodder on this banner is really great. Iron Fighter is a fantastic beast skill for armors just on a survivability basis. I don't know what other beast skills armors would run over this besides Shield Fighter for specific sets, assuming they can even meet the defense check. It is really solid fodder. There's also Instruct fodder, lots of Arc Rival, Favor fodder again. Lots of nice stuff. I would say this banner is more appealing on that end than anything with unit power levels, but some units here are pretty good for catching up. But besides that, you may as well wait and see what's coming up first. The next summer banner should be here in about a week, and that could have way better units on there. The fodder could also be comparable in quality, just not on a quantity scale, obviously. It's kind of hard to compete when there's 3 times less stuff to summon on. There's also the previous summer banner, and that's going to be around for a while too. That banner has a lot of good fodder and units, although it's really only good if you don't have their previous alts. Otherwise, you could just hold off on summoning. It's honestly somewhat tame for the most part, but far from bad. I'd only really consider it if you need the Inheritables TBH, 2BH, to be quite H. I don't really know how to close this video, so I'm gonna do what I do best. Absolutely nothing. Good night.